Take me to them.
Welcome back to another episode of the Pooch podcast. First and foremost, we want to apologize for not being there for week one. We had some things go down where we
A
couldn't record,
lot, a
record a
lot of shit.
podcast. Yeah, a lot of stuff. But we are here for the second week of the NFL season to
We
catch
did
you up on
watch the
each
games.
game. We did watch the games. We watched them all. But
I think.
we are here to give you analysis on the second week in the NFL. We're going to go each game, and we're going to give a plus and a minus for each team, what they showed us throughout the first 2 weeks. But mainly what happened in this last game that showed us what they can do for the future.
In layman terms, a pro and a con each team
Exactly.
on week 3. All right.
So to start us off, we'll be talking about the Thursday night game from last week, the Cleveland Browns versus the Cincinnati Bengals. What do you have on that, Sam?
All right, so I'm gonna start with the Bengals. I'm gonna start with the negative because I think it's the positive. Yeah, I'll start with the positive actually. It's Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow looks fucking tight. Like he looks good. He looks ready. Looks good. The negative here is kind of a double fold. It's lack of personnel. I think that this is gonna be a common for a couple of teams, but no defense, no offensive line. Like even I can even get away with the defense because if they had an offensive line or a shred of one, they could probably hang in games a little closer. These have both been kind of tight games they've lost, so that's really good. Get that. And then I want to flip over to the Browns. The pro, if they're not playing the Baltimore Ravens, which was a shit we won, they looked good. They were running the ball well. Like they looked a little disorganized, but I expect that from a first-time head coach. They're missing some players, but they looked better. I think they should improve. My con is Odell. Odell's my biggest con because they're forcing the ball to him, but there's no connection there between Baker and him. I see Baker pass to Jarvis, Buttes. It's not working. So they got to figure something out to either form a chemistry there, not force Odell the ball, or get him out.
So I have a differing opinion on that specifically. Odell and Baker looked the best they had looked to me in any game they've played. The long pass to Baker, or the long pass to Odell on the sidelines, I believe it was near the end of the first half, was an absolute beaut of a pass and a beautiful catch as well. And that is what signified the turning point in that game for Baker and Odell.
Was that the one where Odell was down way before he was in the end zone? They gave him the touchdown anyway?
Well, he wasn't touched before he went into the end zone.
Yeah, but his knee slapped that fucking ground harder than
he wasn't touched, though, so it wasn't down by contact. So it was a touchdown.
I'm pretty sure I saw him getting held at the start of that play too.
Odell is a good receiver, and I think their relationship between Baker and Odell is going to get better throughout the games. It took a huge leap in this one, in my opinion. Now, me moving to my pros and cons. For Cleveland, my pro was Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb finally balled out in this game. He got shut down by the Ravens last week, but in this game, he ran 22 times for 124 yards, one catch for 9 yards, but he had 2 rushing touchdowns that really propelled them in clutch moments in this game. The con for the Browns this week was their secondary. Their secondary was what I will be referring to throughout this show for many teams was Swiss cheese. If you let Joe Burrow, a rookie with no offensive line, pretty good weapons at the receiver position, tear you up like this, I think you have a lot more to worry about. I know that early on we talked about how good the Cleveland defense is going to be, but they did not look good in this game at all, to me, except for maybe the pass rush. They were getting to Burrow quite a bit. They were forcing him to make odd throws. But moving on to Cincinnati, Cincinnati's pro for me was, just like you, Joe Burrow. He was slinging the ball downfield wherever he could. And, him having AJ and Tyler Boyd and, even T. Higgins got a couple catches this game. Him having those weapons is going to pull him throughout this season where his defense and his offensive line are not. He was 37 for 61 passes in this game, for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. That is a pretty good stat line. I think it is indicative of the cons on this Cincinnati offense, that they have to rely on a rookie quarterback to throw 61 times to make it a competitive game. Hopefully they don't have to do that this coming week. But my con for Cincinnati is there was no defense to speak of. They forced a little bit of pressure on Baker, but Baker stepped up, delivered downfield. I could not see anyone stopping Nick Chubb during this game, and he had respectable numbers of 124, but Baker had like 260 this game, or 280. It was a pretty good number, and I think 2 touchdowns. So it wasn't a total like good game for Baker Mayfield, but that defense made him look like he was shining.
So, all right. So moving on to the Sunday games, September 20th. Ooh, what a fancy day. We have Jacksonville at Tennessee. So I just want to go. I was wrong about Jacksonville. Obviously, they're not 0-16. 1-15.
They're 1-1, but should be 2-0. They should be 2-0. Damn it!
Don't throw a pick. What do I got to say good about this? Mustache Magic, Minshew Mania. My God, and I want to highlight James Robinson. Like, this offense has looked good. Like, yeah, honestly, it's looked much better than I thought it would. Which is funny because James Robinson is killing it where Leonard Fournette could do nothing. So maybe Leonard Fournette's not actually that good. The con here, they look like they're missing a step as a team, though. Honestly, they look like they're missing some oomph on defense. They look like they're kind of missing a little bit of firepower there. That, and I think that they have a terrible head coach. I think Doug Marrone is a giant con for any team. I think he's uninventive. I think he's not a great head coach. So I think that in a couple years, if they're going to hold this personnel, they'll be a great team. When I look at Tennessee, my pros and my cons kind of feel like last year. Well, that's not totally true. My cons feel like last year because I feel like there's a limitation to their team. I feel like it's not as inventive. And I think that this personnel loss this offseason has hurt them a little bit on defense.
I agree.
Tannehill's looking good. Like, Tannehill's looking really good. This offense is looking like it's clicking, and Derrick Henry's not even rolling.
I'll start there. For Tennessee, my positive was Ryan Tannehill. We spoke about this before we recorded, and you brought up the fact that I have no faith in Ryan Tannehill, and I still don't. However, him completing 18 of his 24 passes for 239 yards, that means he's throwing downfield quite a bit, and 4 touchdowns. Really impressive day. And you brought up a good point before we spoke that if Aaron Rodgers had this day, we would all be saying about how good it was. And I will agree with that.
Yeah.
And this was a great game by Tannehill, and he single-handedly won this game for Tennessee. The downside to this game for Tennessee was Derrick Henry. I think he only got about 49 yards rushing. It was nothing. He was there to get the 3-yard plays that any other running back could get, and it seemed like he didn't show up. And that defensive,
I was gonna say, defenses have keyed in on him.
Yes,
but then we've seen Tannehill just torch these defenses when they do that. So
yeah, so they realize, Tennessee does, that teams are cued in to what they're doing, and they have to. I think they're going to be forced to come up with a little bit more creativity among their offense and not just passing to Jonnu Smith. Moving on to Jacksonville, my positive was obviously Minshew Mania. I will agree. 30 for 45, 339 yards, 3 touchdowns. However, the thing that brought him to lose this game was the 2 interceptions that he threw. I think that's par for the course with Jacksonville. He's an air raid style quarterback, and even in college he threw a lot of picks, but it's because he was used to throwing the ball and absolutely just chucking it down the field. And he did that against a Tennessee defense that's supposed to be good. good to great. And Gardner Minshew, a quarterback we all thought would be replaced by maybe his second string this year if he did terribly again. He's doing great. I
Yeah.
mean, if he curves the interceptions, he's gonna be the starter for the rest of the year. Even if he throws the interceptions, I really think he's gonna be the starter for the rest of the year.
It won't matter. Yeah, they're not benching him.
But the real downside was to Jacksonville was their secondary. They were getting plenty of pressure on the defensive line and the linebackers on Tannehill. However, the DBs were absolutely letting those wide receivers roam free. And the tight end, Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith was all over the field. He was Ryan Tannehill's favorite target.
A beautiful catch in the end zone.
Yes,
a
beautiful touchdown.
Mossed that motherfucker.
It was like a 30-yard touchdown pass in the middle of the end zone. So I have a lot. Boy. I think there's a lot to look forward to with this Jacksonville team, but their secondary is not one. So I think we'll see them continue to be in these games that are shootouts, and I think that's where Minshew really shines is the shootout mentality and him just chucking the ball downfield. And we'll see if Jacksonville can skirt out a couple more wins with that. I still do think that they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, but they're just showing teams something that they had not seen from Jacksonville in the past.
Yeah, they trimmed a lot of fat, and I wonder if just this team's a little more positive, so they're playing with a little more hibbity.
So DJ Chark showing out.
Yeah, he was like one touchdown away from basically having like a giant week one.
Yep.
So moving on to Carolina at Tampa Bay. Obviously with Carolina, there was the injury boogaloo this weekend. Christian McCaffrey's out 4 to 6 weeks. So that sucks. Big time.
A lot.
He's missed one game his entire collegiate NFL career. So I know that he is dying right now. I'm sure he'll try and push it to 4. Team should probably just take it to 6 and try and move that draft stock up.
What is his injury exactly?
He has a high ankle sprain.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time these last 2 days watching injury videos. Actually, at this point, I would love to give a shout out for anyone who watches fantasy. Fantasy Doctors is fantastic content for this. But pros and cons here. With McCaffrey in, this offense looks fucking awesome.
Yeah.
They were throwing, Bridgewater was throwing deep, throwing shout. I mean, he had, and this is McCaffrey making a great play, but he got bopped on one of these throws, and McCaffrey just brought it down anyway. I mean, this offense looked good.
Yeah.
The offensive line did not, and the defense looks like garbage. So this is one of those teams where, just like the Bengals, they are in the middle of the pack. I think Carolina's in a better spot given the personnel, but they're in the middle of the pack kind of team that has a good offense. I now don't think that as much with the McCaffrey out, but the con defense, they got to be able to stop teams, and they're not. Yes. They're just not doing that. Flip side of the ball, Tampa, same team last year. It's the same team. They didn't address any of the problems. They changed the quarterback, and it didn't matter. Against good teams, they look crap. Against bad teams, they look great. It's the same fucking team. This is what I said all off season. It's the same team with a different paint. Like, the secondary looks like crap. The pass rush looks great. The receivers are doing good. The running game's kind of better with Fournette, I guess, so it's not totally the same team, but that's my take. That's good and bad. Everything good, same as last year. Everything bad, same as last year. Minus the interceptions, I guess. But against fucking Saints, you threw 2. One was Mike Evans' fault, but one was just a boneheaded pass. So,
yeah. I'll start with Tampa Bay. The big positive for me in this game was they finally got their running game going. You haven't seen all offseason any confidence in their run game, obviously, because they had like a three running back system at the very beginning of this year, and then somehow the Jacksonville Jaguars were like, get the hell out of town, Leonard Fournette. And a couple tweets later, and Leonard Fournette is in Tampa Bay. They had combined effort for total run this week of 122 yards. That's a lot for Tampa Bay. 3 touchdowns, 2 to Leonard Fournette, and 1 to Ronald Jones II. This is very good for Tampa Bay. because Tom Brady has shown that he can struggle against a pretty good defensive back groups like the Saints, especially throwing picks and misjudging throws and stuff. So really having this run game to fall back on is a really good sign for Tampa Bay. The not so good thing for Tampa Bay is the DBs were burned all day long by Bridgewater. It's like you said, the same problems they had last year. Their DBs are trash. And, they drafted that rookie. I believe he's at a safety position, but he was still getting beat all day long by Teddy Bridgewater. There weren't a lot of deep passes by Bridgewater, but he was burning them for 10, 12 yards a pass.
Yeah,
that's gonna keep the defense on the field, and it's gonna keep them tired.
He had a couple huge passes to Robbie Anderson there.
Robbie Anderson had over 100 yards this game. Yeah,
I mean, Mike Davis torched this Tampa team for plays, and that's Mike Davis.
Mike Davis was third on the team in receiving yards this week. He's absolutely showing out. I'm glad he's found a home outside of Seattle. The positive for Carolina for me is their offense is absolutely moving. Yeah, great tempo. We'll see if without Christian McCaffrey next week if it keeps up that tempo. But it was great short passes right in Bridgewater's zone where he succeeds is with a good running back and short throws that really burn the defense, keep them tired. The negative for Carolina this week, besides the Christian McCaffrey injury, that's a huge negative. But their defensive backs were getting blown up by Tom Brady.
Yeah, because it's a bad defense.
Their defense, I think, has talent on the first two levels of the defense, the defensive line and the linebackers. But after that, it's looking scarce at the DB position, and they were getting burned all day long, and it was kind of embarrassing. I saw one play where a Carolina defender got turned around twice. Not very good. Not very good looking towards next week.
Yeah. So then we move on to Denver at Pittsburgh. Denver is now without its leading receiver for the season in Cortland Sutton and is missing its quarterback for, I believe it's 2 to 5 weeks with a shoulder injury. They just signed Blake Bortles.
It's 3 to 5 weeks with the shoulder surgery. Yeah. So
it's hard to come up with negatives because I don't feel like we've fully seen this team healthy outside of week 1 where there was some inconsistency and they were missing Sutton. This is a hard team for me to look at pro and negative here. I'd say pro is that they looked like they had a lot of promise. They looked like they had potential that they could scrap through with teams. The con here, there have been injuries. And kind of on the flip side, this feels, I want to say lazy, but I think it's really hard to look at this team. Like there was just, I don't think enough time to really see what the major pros and cons have been in these 2 weeks. They've struggled, it seems like, to kind of get ahead in games. They've been kind of tit for tat with teams and then just kind of can't finish it, I'd say is the big negative here. But they've looked like they've had some potential with everything. Judy went down with an injury and the game came back. There's just injuries galore on this team. On the flip side, Pittsburgh, they look like they did last year, but with a slightly better offense. So that is both pro and con. It's exactly kind of, I think, what we thought they would be, which is that this is a defensive front with an offense that has some talent, but is not quite a dominant one. But Big Ben is here to make some competent plays. He's looked better in each game. Like he looked better in the second half against the Giants. He's looked better now. So I mean, yeah, they look like, last year, but kind of better.
Big Ben could have used this offseason for sure.
Yeah.
With OTAs. For me, obviously there's 2 big negatives for Denver, and that's Drew Lock and Cortland Sutton being out. Drew Lock only 3 to 5 weeks. Cortland Sutton out for the entire season.
They're just negatives. They suck.
I think the real big negative to Cortland Sutton going down is the veteran presence he brings to that wide receiving core, and with a young Jerry Jeudy showing signs that he is effective in that style of offense is really kind of sad now, because now he's not going to really have a mentor. I mean, unless Cortland Sutton sticks around, the clubhouse or,
I'm sure he will.
The training areas to help him. One huge negative for the Denver Broncos, which I didn't hear you bring up, but the offensive line allowed 7 sacks this game.
Yeah,
7.
both their guards, I believe, are out for this season. I believe one opted
Yeah.
out and the other one was hurt.
Jeff Driscoll was under fire his entire time in that game. I don't think he had a clear pass, like a clear pocket to throw a pass almost all game unless he rushed.
Yeah, this is just where I talked about cohesion was a problem for me because the first game it was going to be kind of sloppy for everybody, and the second game everyone got hurt. That's why I talk about Denver's hard for me to see. I wanted to see the cohesion. What did they kind of look like with everybody present? Sutton didn't play week 1, barely played week 2. So you're right though. That offensive line is a huge negative.
Yeah, and even my positive, I found it very, very hard to find a positive for Denver in this game. I found it in Jerry Jeudy, his improvement, to from week 1 to week 2 is awesome. It's good to see. I don't know if he's going to get a lot more improvement while Drew Lock is out because you really need that connection with your quarterback as a rookie. And Driscoll looks competent at best. They did just sign Blake Bortles, though, for a 1-year contract. That is big news. We'll see if Blake Bortles could come in and actually do work. It's hey, he is the best backup quarterback in the league besides Nick Foles. So
hey man, going for that second overall pick.
Yeah. And then for the Steelers, it was kind of hard to find a negative in this game for me.
It's the offense, weirdly enough. Like it looks stale, I think.
I didn't think so. I thought that Big Ben was chucking the ball all over the field. I think their run game was stale this week, and it may seem like they didn't do as well, but James Conner got over 100 yards. I mean, Snell, he chipped in as well
with a fumble.
Yeah, but James Conner looked good, but it was a lot of attempts to get that 103. He obviously looked better than he did in week 1. He went down in week 1 against the Giants, but he came back in this game and did pretty good. The positive for the Steelers was their defense, hands down. 10 sacks this season, leads the NFL, and 7 of them are in this game.
TJ Watt, oh my God.
7 sacks in a game has to be respected heavily.
And defensive player of the year, early jump out star for me.
Is TJ Watt or Calais Campbell for me. But Big Ben also had a hell of a game today, or on Sunday. He was absolutely airing it out like he hasn't done in the past couple seasons, without Antonio Brown. But he has some young receivers, Deontay Johnson, James Washington, that are starting to really evolve, and obviously the veteran Juju.
Chase Claypool's looked awesome.
Also, Chase Claypool, that really long touchdown that he got on the sideline he had to sprinted down the sideline. Chase Claypool, yes, obvious as well. That was a really good pickup.
So then moving on to the Rams at the Eagles, I think that we both can admit, at least thus far in the first 2 weeks, we were kind of wrong. I think about the Rams a bit.
Absolutely.
This offensive line. So this offensive line has looked like it did.
We thought it was going to be aged. We thought it was going to be one of the middle to last. But
Jared Goff's looked good.
Jared Goff has had protection all game, both games.
I would say the con here, the defense has looked and at a lot of this.
That's what my con is.
The pass rush has been good. I am worried about what happens when I'm trying to think of a decent way to say this. That's not a fair guy. So the Rams defense has kind of looked questionable. The running backs have looked. Malcolm Brown looked great week 1, and Darrell Henderson looked pretty good week 2. So this
pretty good. He had almost 100 yards.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
That's a split committee too.
Yeah, well, a split committee is hard because it's just taking a Russian roulette each week to which one does well. Yeah. But then we move over to Philadelphia. Everyone's fucking hurt. That's your con. Everyone's fucking hurt. They don't have a receiver 1. Rager just it's not getting it done. Their running game, their running game looked good. Their running game looked great. Miles Sanders looked really good. but I find it hard to fight. This team's really not looking great. Carson Wentz is looking like he's under pressure every snap, which he is. Injuries,
Yes.
baby. That's the con is injuries. Pro though, running game looked great. Miles Sanders has looked phenomenal. The Rager has shown flashes, I guess, of potentially what he can be, but you're not going to be able to hit a deep receiver if you have no time in the pocket. So, I tell you what, the tight ends have looked good. Tight ends have looked good. Your
Dallas
shallow
Goedert
attack, your shallow attack. So,
and
but
Ertz. Yeah.
injuries before the season even started, they were off to a bad start.
Yeah.
It's kind of everything we talked about before the season started. Our worries with this team
are exactly happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're exactly on point there. I'll start with the Philadelphia Eagles. The bad of this week far outweighed the good, and I think the main problem this week was Carson Wentz. He threw two interceptions, 0 touchdowns. He's not efficient, and I do believe it's because of what you said, and it's that offensive line taking a huge hit, losing 2 starters, and then moving Jason Peters. I think that's his name, Jason Peters.
Yeah, they moved him over to his original position,
tackle.
but he basically is retired. He's basically out the door.
He's so much older now that the reason they moved him into guard was so he didn't have to move as much. But
well, he originally, I believe, played left side.
But him at that age now playing left is really tough. And
they're just teams are just stacking. Aaron Donald's looked great.
I would say that the positive was the same positive that you saw, and that was the running backs. Miles Sanders and Boston Scott are, I think, single-handedly keeping this offense alive.
Yeah, the Miles tight ends and that it's this shallow attack game is keeping them alive. They weren't even in this game though. They were.
Yeah. I mean, Miles Sanders had 20 rushes for 95 yards, 3 catches for 36. And then Boston Scott was definitely the 2 back this week, but he made a couple big first downs. He had 4 rushes for 19 yards and 3 catches for 24. It's an improving running back core, and I think it's the only real upside to this Philadelphia offense at this moment. Moving on to the Rams, however, I really couldn't find a bad thing that the Rams did this week, except for their defense gave up some plays to Carson Wentz over the middle.
Kind of same thing happened in that Dallas game.
Half, almost the entire first half, Carson Wentz was tearing them apart in the middle of the field. And, I think that their defense pass rush was amazing. Wentz was under pressure all game long, and that really forced them to get the 3 turnovers that they got, which should have been 4. Carson went through 2 picks, but a third one went into 3 different defensive backs' hands and was dropped. So it should have looked a lot worse. The positive for the Rams, however, was one that I think I will eat my words on. Jared Goff. I said, beginning of the season that I don't expect a lot to come out of Goff this season, and he has absolutely stymied that in the first 2 weeks. He has looked amazing. His wide receiving core has looked, I will admit, elite. So I will take that. If you watch one of the earlier podcasts when we talked about the Rams, I said they weren't elite. I do believe that they're getting to that point, though. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. And then Van Jefferson making a huge, huge contribution now. So, not to forget Tyler Higbee. Tyler Higbee's 3 touchdowns this week, and all 3 were beautiful passes and beautiful catches. So the Rams are looking really good this season. The only part on the offense that I would be weary about would be the running backs. Hopefully Cam Akers comes back this week, if not next week, and continues to have an impact on that offense.
Yeah, so we talked about injuries. No one faced more injuries than the San Francisco 49ers at the Jets. They came out 31-13 with this win, which is impressive considering that they were missing their 2 best corners, their tight end, Deebo Samuel, and then in the game they lost their 2 best pass rushers. They lost 2 running backs and their quarterback. This team is going to be lucky, I think, right now to make the playoffs. Injuries have taken them from what I assume to be a Super Bowl contender, what I had locked in as an NFC Championship potential Super Bowl contender. They're out. The Pro, This team still looks good. Shanahan could run a fucking offense. This team gets Debo back week 4. It sounds like Kittle should be potentially back week 3 or week 4. So they still have their pass catching weapons. Jerick McKinnon's looked good. They still have Kyle Juszczyk. They have weapons. So that's my pro for the Niners, is that they should be getting some people back. Garoppolo has a high ankle sprain, so he should probably come back a little earlier. Just won't be mobile. But we talk about the Jets. Your pro is that you're probably going to draft Trevor Lawrence. I cannot, like, we talked about before about Sam Darnold. I don't even want to talk about I just don't think there's a positive to find in this team. Darnold's looked, for all things considered, he's looked all right, considering the hellhole that he's stuck in right now. But Gase isn't going to make it through the season. This team looks god awful. They lost Jamison Crowder, who was their one highlight. Like, it's bad. It's bad. It's hit the button. You're drafting Trevor Lawrence and trading Sam Darnold somewhere else.
Yeah, so, I won't beat a dead horse. The 4 injuries for San Francisco are obviously the negative. They didn't really have a negative besides that in this game. Mostert, Bosa, and
they destroyed the Jets still.
Yeah, Mostert, I don't know how to pronounce that last name.
Mostert,
Bosa, and Solomon Thomas all out with knee injuries. Mostert and Bosa out for the season. We'll see about Solomon Thomas.
No, Mostert's not out for the season, last I saw.
I thought he was out for the season.
No, Solomon Thomas and Nick Bosa both have torn ACLs.
Solomon Thomas has a torn ACL confirmed?
Yes. That's the
last
last
I saw
report
it was just a knee injury.
But last I saw, Mostert had the knee injury. But
all 3 of them have the knee injury. But
yeah. And Tevin Coleman has something.
Tevin Coleman has an ankle injury, I believe. But Jimmy G, obviously with what they believe is a high ankle sprain. I think they said he was out for 2 to 4 weeks.
Something like that, yeah. I'm sure he'll push it and come back in 3 or 2.
However, one positive that I saw in this game was a tight end that we have given a lot of shit to over the past couple of years.
It's Captain Concussion.
Captain Concussion, Jordan Reed got 2 touchdowns this game. 2.
No one likes him more than
in the first half as well. In the first half. And if he can make an impact, I think Jordan Reed can carry this offense a little bit, not completely on his shoulders, not at all. But he can be, I hate to say it, but the George Kittle for now.
When Kittle comes back, he can
in only the ways that Kittle is the ball hog on that offense. And I think Jordan Reed will become that, especially with a backup quarterback like Mullins, who's played almost an entire season. But I think a tight end is going to be really valuable to him in this time that Jimmy G's gone. So Jordan Reed is my plus side for the 49ers. The Jets, the positive was Sam Darnold looking okay. He was looking pretty good in the pocket and okay on play action. But nobody ever believed the play action because their running back is Frank Gore. So really they were kind of stuffed at that point as well. And then their offensive line is a joke. So
it's so bad.
The obvious negative was that the defense couldn't stop a feather in the wind. This defense let Jimmy Garoppolo absolutely tear him up. While Garoppolo was hurt, he got hurt in the first quarter of the game and then played almost an entire quarter, lighting them up. So they were not getting any pressure on Jimmy G except for the first quarter when he got hit and taken down awkwardly, and that's why his ankle got hurt. But
yeah, that
not a lot to look forward to for the Jets.
My conspiracy, that looked a little intentional. I thought he wrapped that ankle a little too much. But moving on to
also, another fact before we move on, San Francisco, looking forward to this week 3, they're missing 9 out of their original 11 starters this week. 9 out of 11.
Luckily, they get to play the Giants. So
that's right.
So moving on to Buffalo at Miami. Here's your pro, Josh Allen. He is a front runner for MVP right now. He has looked so fucking good. They added stuff on it. It's worked. He has been passing like his job depended on it. He has fucking looked amazing.
Absolutely.
My con here is their running backs. I don't think their running backs have done much. So I'm worried when they get into these tight games with better teams, they're not going to be able to slow the pace down. They're going to be a lot more aggressive. Zach Moss has looked okay. He's looked like a rookie, though.
Yeah. Zach
Um,
Moss had a big game first week just because of a touchdown catch, but
Yeah, so I'm not worried about the defense right now. I know that they gave up 28 to Miami, but just like 2011, defenses were really slow to get going in the holdout season, so this season's gonna be rough for them. On the flip side, Miami, the team looks good. Like they look like they're kind of missing a couple pieces from getting there, but Fitzpatrick's looked all
and
right.
they're all on defense. That's what they're missing.
Yeah, the turns out that every year the team that just goes and pays everybody in free agency, it's not the move. So the pros, the offenses looked interesting. There's potential here. That's the same thing we kind of thought. I think in the offseason where Miami would struggle in games, but that they have potential. It looks like it's coming to fruition.
Yeah. I'm gonna start with Miami here. I think the positives in this game were, even though they got blown up for 417 yards, if you watch the game, the defensive backs for Miami were glued to their receivers, and every single one of the Bills wide receivers made amazing catches in order to get those
Yeah, that
yards.
John Brown touchdown was just fucking insanity.
Yeah. Stephon Diggs had to jump so high in the air for so many of his catches because the DBs were all over him. And that's not Josh Allen overthrowing. That's Josh Allen placing where the ball needs to be
It's
because
so
the
good.
DBs were all
It's
over
so
them.
good. It's him and Wilson right
So
now
it
for
may
MVP.
look like they got lit up this week, which they did points wise, but the DBs played well. They were there on their man. It's just their wide receivers are just a lot better. That's what it came down to for me. Also, Gesicki had a game. He is the go-to for Fitzmagic, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. He had an amazing one-handed catch, by the way. If you go look at the highlights,
yeah,
amazing
he
one-handed
extended
catch.
out for that bitch.
Yes. The positives for Buffalo, it's an obvious one. Josh Allen looked amazing.
So good.
25 for 35, 417 yards, 4 touchdowns.
He
4
looked
rushes
like
and 18
Lamar
yards.
last year.
He looked amazing. Another shout out I want to give out. I didn't put him as my positive for this game, but Stephon Diggs finally got a huge jump in catches this week.
Who would have thought adding a wide receiver
amazing.
one?
Yeah, who would have thought that adding a wide receiver one would make that offense absolutely explosive? But he made a lot of fingertip catches this week that were very impressive. So I want to give a shout out to Stephon Diggs. The negative for the Buffalo Bills was the quote-unquote great defense that we thought they were going to have this year. Let Fitzmagic tear them up for 31 for 47, 328 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Not to mention their running backs were all over them for over 100 yards. So this Buffalo defense needs work. These DBs were getting torn up by Fitzmagic, and that cannot happen if you're going to compete for a championship at all.
Yeah, that power outage I think also threw Buffalo off.
Yeah,
but like I said, if this is happening again in week 5 and 6, I'm more concerned then. But right now, because of the short offseason defense, they're gonna be struggling.
Yeah,
I mean, we've seen already Wilson, Ryan, all these quarterbacks just fucking torching people left and right.
Bridgewater,
hey, good quarterback. I think we can move on to a team that we were dead fucking wrong about. Dead wrong, and I'm sure you are thrilled that we were wrong about it. Minnesota at Indianapolis.
Yes.
I don't know what to fucking say as a pro here. The defense has looked bad. They lost Barr. That's huge. The offense has not looked good. Kirk has looked all over the place. Dalvin Cook has looked slower at times. Thielen can't carry they've just looked all over the place. It's just Con City. I guess my pro here is that you have nice uniforms. I don't know if it's just this bad start. I don't know what it is, but this is concerning. This is batting down the hatches, kind of I don't know if they're just going to be off to a bad start and recover. This feels like a team. If I had to gamble on a team that has this start and then kind of by the end of the season goes on kind of a 7-win streak, this would be the team I'd still gamble on. But it's concerning. On the other side of the ball, my biggest concern, Phillip Rivers looks like Phillip fucking Rivers. So he can't score in the end zone. He throws picks. The positive here, Darius Leonard, first 30 games, 300 tackles. First player in NFL history to ever do it. Jonathan Taylor has looked beautiful. This team, everything we thought about this team was correct. Everything that we were worried about this team is also correct. So much like Pittsburgh, I think Indianapolis is just exactly par course what we thought it would be. The cons, secondary can't do much. Phillip Rivers has problems because he's older. Phillip Rivers has always had problems. Pros, they've got a good run game, good O-line. Their pass rush is good.
Yeah, I'm going to start there. Indianapolis, my pro for this week was the defense. Absolutely dominant. They were covering BC Johnson, Adam Thielen, and Justin Jefferson all game long. They were on top of them. And, Cousins did get a couple good passes to Thielen downfield. They were early, but besides that, absolute domination by this Indianapolis defense, and Jonathan Taylor looked amazing.
Ooh.
Wisconsin Badgers, baby.
He's on my fantasy team, just carrying me.
I really like him in fantasy.
I love
the big negative for me for Indianapolis was not Phillip Rivers, because Phillip Rivers would have had a way better game if not T.Y. Hilton having 4 big drops, including a 50 or 40-yard touchdown pass in the end zone. He had it in his hands and it bounced and went away.
It's hard to view him as a negative when I didn't see him as a positive this season.
This may be a little bit biased because I started him in fantasy this week and he got me 5 points. But this man needs to get his shit together. You cannot have your number 1 wide receiver do this bad and then have Paris Campbell go down with injury. Who are you looking at? T.Y. Hilton and Michael Pittman Jr.?
Zach Pascal too. Zach Pascal looked good, and so did Mo Alley Cox. Their goddamn gigantor on fucking tight end. Dude looks like fucking Andre the fucking Giant. He's ridiculous.
But I think Ty really needs to fix his shit. I don't know what's going on. But that
all right, Mr. Green Bay, it's time you get a shit on the Minnesota Vikings. Go for it.
Oh, I can't wait. So I want to show you something. So my only positive for Miami was the running game at the beginning of the game, which they Minnesota? Also had. Yes.
Miami's looked better.
So my positive for Miami this week was...
You did it again.
Fuck! It's because I have them M-I-N, but the N looks...
Just think of Kirk fucking Cousins.
Sorry, you still need to think about him. But the one positive for Minnesota that I found this week was the running game at the beginning of the game. I think Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison are possibly the best running back duo in the league. And they had 1 or 2 good drives at the beginning of the game and then got shut down the rest. But that was my one positive for Minnesota. And then I'll show you, I wrote down a negative. I wrote down everything else.
It's bad. It's like having your door open on a submarine.
Yes, it was absolutely terrible. They couldn't get the ball moving in the air to save their life. I think Kirk Cousins ended up with like 86 yards passing.
That safety was...
There was a point in the second quarter that Kirk Cousins had a 0.3 passing percentage. A 0.3 passing percentage.
Yeah,
and that's absolutely garbage. And I've said this for the past 2 years that Kirk Cousins has been in Minnesota, and that is he is average. Absolute average. And what does average do? They fuck up like average players do.
Oh, yeah. I don't disagree with you.
I had way less confidence in Kirk Cousins this year because he didn't have that deep threat of Stephon Diggs to save him in those clutch situations. So I'm not really surprised by Minnesota doing this bad. I am surprised that their defense is doing this bad. Their defense still has a lot of good players. A lot.
Yeah, this shortened off season is just, it's killer on defenses.
Yes. Especially for the Minnesota defensive backs, who are, I think they're starting 3 new starters. I think Harrison Smith is the only returning starter on that defense.
Go to a new team, Harrison Smith.
Harrison Smith is amazing, and I'm afraid of him every time
to Dallas
he plays because he is a ferocious safety that loves to hit and hit hard. But the rest of Minnesota is absolutely looking terrible, and I don't look forward to what's coming ahead for them.
Yeah.
Actually, I should say I do look forward to what's going to come to them in this season.
Yeah. So then we cover Detroit at Green Bay. I'm going to start with Detroit here. Patricia needs to go. That's your con. Patricia's bad. This offense has looked good considering that its main weapon is gone.
Absolutely.
The running backs of this offense has looked good. I don't know another way to really put it. Like AP, Kerryon Johnson, Swift, kind of this looks well. If the defense was better, this would be a better team. There are definitely limitations. Stafford cannot do everything. Stafford made some plays that I wasn't totally sure on, but this defense and Patricia gotta get something figured out. Patricia's gotta go. I want to move over to the other side of the ball. The Packers. They've looked good. They've looked good in 2 games. My concern for this offense is injuries. I'll say this. I acknowledge that they've played really well. I'm concerned that if Devonta Adams is out, when they play teams that are not shit shows, they will not have this success. Teams will key in on the fact that they are really kind of dimensionally focused. Aaron seems to be dimensionally focused on kind of a player at a time. And that can work really well for teams and really bad for teams too. He has looked great. He looked way better than he did the last 3 years, I think. He's already on 2 weeks looked great. I think last year there was really bad scripting for games. I think LaFleur did not.
They were not fluid in games. I would agree with the 3 years. I would agree.
The defense has looked good at times. They've also looked iffy at times to me with certain plays. This team feels a lot like Tampa. A lot of the same problems, but their offense is much more fluid. I am nervous about Devonta Adams' health, though. I'll say if Devonta Adams is out, when they play teams that can actually rush and actually shut down certain plays, it's going to be much more troublesome. But I will say my initial comment about this team, I was off mark. They've looked good. And if they keep it up, they will probably win this division.
Yeah, that's what I can hope for, I should say. I will start with the Detroit Lions. My positive was that this is pretty much just Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford was my positive for the game. He's still slinging it. 20 for 33, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. I think Stafford is going to try to hold this team together as much as he can before they inevitably get a new coach. And I hope that he has at least one successful season with a new coach. I truly do. Matt Patricia needs to go and go fast. I think before the end of the season, they're going to tank him. I think by week 13, he's gone, like Mike McCarthy shit. And there is really no upside to this team while Matt Patricia is head coach. My negative for the Detroit Lions was the defense only sacked Aaron Rodgers 1 time and then didn't pressure him the rest of the game. He was allowed to throw all day long. The pocket was huge, and he could escape and dump out to Aaron Jones. It just seemed like he was spreading out the offense so much where Detroit needed him to singularly focus on one player, and he wouldn't do it. So I do disagree with you on your point that he is one-dimensional at times, or that he is one-dimensional at all times kind of thing.
I don't think at all times.
It's one receiver, one receiver, one receiver. I think it's looked a lot like that because in the Minnesota game, Devontae had a majority
I see him key in on players, and it's something I see with quarterbacks when they get older.
If they're hot, they're hot.
Well, in particular, older quarterbacks, I see them key in on players that it's actually been one of my biggest beefs with his play is that if he doesn't trust a player, he will not throw to the player, and Tom Brady does that same shit.
That's why they're successful.
No, but it
makes a better wide receiving core.
It limits the offense at times. That's all I'm saying.
No, it doesn't.
His offense has looked good.
So.
I disagree, but it's fine. We don't have to see eye to eye.
Yeah, we don't have to see eye to eye on this, but he is throwing the ball all over the field to everyone. So I disagree with it.
By everyone, you mean Allen Lazard?
Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, all of them had a catch this week, and then Devontae's 3 before he got injured. So they are spreading the ball around.
It's the same cast.
If the tight end Jake Sternberger didn't drop 2 big passes this week, he would have looked good.
Fuck Sternberger. Kill his family. Just kill him and his family. Just fucking ridiculous.
But big positive this game for Green Bay Packers. The Aaron to Aaron connection.
Oh God.
I I want to shout out Aaron Jones for having his career day in rushing. Not for touchdowns. That came last year against the Cowboys, but the Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones connection is amazing. Aaron Jones had 18 rushes for 168 yards. One of them was a big booming 80-yard run up the middle to kind of seal out the game. 2 touchdowns rushing, 4 catches for 68 yards passing, and 1 touchdown through the air. I would say that the big glaring thing that's a negative for the Packers is they cannot let teams get out on them early. Their defense is starting so slow each of these games. And they let Kirk Cousins absolutely throw on them in the first drive, and then Dalvin Cook run down their throats. Also, Alexander Mattison on the first drive last week. They just get punched in the mouth constantly at the beginning of the games. They have come back both games, obviously, and put in good efforts. But they let Stafford ball out so early that they got a 14-3 lead. And if this were if this were any better of a team, they would not have come back so easily. So they really have to be cautious about letting these teams get up on them and letting them get punched in the mouth like they did with San Francisco twice last year. I think it was 2 turnovers, one at the beginning of each of those games. That really just shut down Green Bay. The buzz that was going just kind of fell, and they couldn't recuperate. So they really need to work on that. They really need the defense needs to show up in the first 3 drives before they get blown out too much where Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones can't save them. I will say though that I am really kind of angry about the MVP talk with Aaron Rodgers.
No, no, it's Josh Allen and Russell Wilson.
Stop. Just stop, okay? I will happily give that to someone else, because when everybody starts saying Aaron Rodgers looks like the MVP, that's when, if he has a game that is lower than normal, oh my God, he's fucking terrible. So stop. Yeah. You better be focusing on Josh Allen and Russell Wilson at this point, because those are the 2 candidates.
All right, we're moving on to, I want to say, game of the week. Some people might disagree. Seattle, New England had an amazing game, but Atlanta at Dallas. I want to first it. I felt every
game of the week, not the game.
I felt every it was the game of the week to me. I felt every emotion under the fucking sun.
How about one of those Cowboys?
Books. I'm gonna start with Atlanta.
Okay.
This offense outside of running back looks amazing. Russell Gage, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley might be the best receiving core in the NFL. Like I'm not shitting you. As a trio, Julio was dealing with a hamstring injury. He barely missed a touchdown. Calvin Ridley has been fucking electric. 4 touchdowns and Russell Gage, like Matt Ryan's looked great. Putting up the numbers. We're gonna get to the con now. This defense could not stop a college team. It's
That's
bad.
My exact note.
It's bad. They got, I kind of lost track here, like 4 fumbles against Dallas. I think that was more Dallas than Atlanta, though. I saw them against Seattle, not be able to do shit. So that's where Atlanta is, exactly where we thought. A fucking great offense.
Yeah.
God awful defense. Move to Dallas. I don't know if there's an individual pro and con I can say other than this. Which Dallas are you going to get? Are you going to get the Dallas in the first half that fumbles the ball 4 times, throws completions for short? Or are you going to get the Dallas that takes the top off, drops deep passes to Gallup, Lamb, and Cooper, has Zeke push through? Like, which Dallas are you getting? Because each one comes with a whole set of pros and cons. I would say in 2 games, I've seen this offense take way too long to get going. I see no leadership on the sideline. Those are my cons. Dak has not looked great when they're not kind of doing... I don't know because it's hard to say that he doesn't look great because in that second half he looked great, but all these short, I don't know what the fuck is the idea behind short call play calling because we're throwing all these underneaths and it's not working.
Yeah,
So that my pro and con is which Dallas shows up because in the second half of that game when we were rolling more, I watched the defense play better because they weren't on the field every fucking other play. And of course, 4 turnovers is gonna kill you no matter what.
Yes.
But so I think it's just which Dallas we're going to see. I don't know if this is what the team is going to be like. I don't know if this is the rusty start. But if it's the take the top off Dallas, this is a team to be afraid of. If it's the can't move things Dallas, don't worry because they'll might win the division and get bopped the first round.
All right, so I'll start with Dallas. To go off your point there, I think Dallas this year, from what I've seen, is going to do great against, I would say, good to bad teams, and they're going to struggle against like great teams. They're going to struggle heavily, and I'll start off with Dallas here. My negative was there was no pressure on Matt Ryan. It seemed like all game. And he was torching their DBs all game. If it was to Gage, if it was to Ridley, if it was to Julio for a couple, it just was embarrassing
that
for
middle
the
of the
defensive
field was
back
wide open.
Wide open all day. And that's where Calvin Ridley got a lot of his yards. But my positive for Dallas was that Dak never quit. 34 for 47. And let me put this on fucking record, 450 yards.
He did the same shit last year.
K. Patna, 450 yards, 1 passing touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns.
That part was he looked. I'm glad that we were willing to call more QB scrambles in the red zone because in the past we've kind of
Cam Newton yesterday or on Sunday.
It looked like Black Alex Smith. Preach it.
Fucking, he went off, okay, and he didn't quit in this game. However, it's not a good team. It's not a good defense that he did this against. So, I'm really, fired up to see what he does against great teams. I will hold out
we play Seattle week 3, so
Seattle's defense gave up 30 points to New England.
We'll get there, but it's a tougher opponent.
Yes, tougher opponent for sure, especially with Jamal Adams coming for his head. But, Atlanta, same things that you said. The plus was Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, 24 for 36, 273, and 4 touchdowns. You can't really be mad at that stat line. He did not get sacked at all, so there wasn't a lot of pressure on him. But the negative is exactly what you said. It's the defense. It was full of holes all game long for Atlanta. And Dak torched him. Dak torched him all game, especially in the second half. Yes,
very much so. So moving on to New York at Chicago. Lost to Saquon, obviously huge deal. I have not heard anything official. Last I heard was that they were going to sign Devontae Freeman. They'd worked him out. It sounds like they were finalizing a contract. That won't do nothing.
Finalizing a contract today, it seems.
Here's your pro. Daniel Jones has looked good. Daniel Jones is just considering everything kind of going on with this team. Daniel Jones has looked all right. You guys kept it close in 2 games against 2 really good defenses. The con is kind of everything else.
Giants starting out against like 2 of the top 5 defenses.
Joe Judge has looked interesting. I've liked Joe Judge's calling. In 2, he's managed to not let. I
hate his calling. So I totally disagree with that.
The stalest man on earth is still running this offense. So there is that issue. Moving on to the Bears. I mean, that's just with the Giants. Like, there's not much there. Not much has gone well for them. Like, they've played all right. The Bears. Your cons, inconsistency on offense. It feels like the same goddamn recipe last year. I'd say the pro here, Trubisky, has looked better than he has in the past. I would say thus far this is maybe the best Trubisky we've seen.
Against the Giants and the Lions.
Let's just take what we can get from him. The defense looked all right. There have been some running issues. Again, the defenses, I don't want to focus in on them too hard because of the short off season, but the Bears have looked like the same team the past 2 years. The offense just looks like it's kind of staled for them. It's like Pittsburgh. Everyone knows everything with this team. Montgomery, I'll say this. Montgomery's looked amazing these first 2 games. Montgomery has looked great. That's your biggest pro. You actually have a running back that's functioning now.
I don't know if he's looked great. I think he's looked good, but not great.
I mean, I think that I think he looked good in the first week. I think he looked great this week. Granted, it is against the Giants.
Yeah. I'm gonna start in Chicago. My pro for this game was the defense was dominant most of the game. The lackadaisical play calls of the Giants really kind of made it easy, but the Giants couldn't move the ball down the field in the first half at all. And, I think that Chicago got up 14-0, and it really didn't look like it was going to be a close game at all. And then, Chicago just kind of petered out in the second half. But that brings me to my con, and that is Trubisky could not be consistent with his accuracy and his timing, and especially in the second half. He looked good in the first half, but in the second half he threw 2 picks. He is not – I don't think he's getting better. I think he looked better in this game because he played a Giants defense that I think looked pretty good for what we assumed they'd be like. But not the best that they could be.
I mean, hey, just because a turd doesn't smell doesn't mean there's not a turd there.
That's true. But my positive for New York was their pressure that they put on Trubisky and their 2 interceptions. They did not get that same kind of pressure on Big Ben last week. It was almost non-existent. Ben was allowed to throw the ball as much as he wanted.
Well, a top 5 offensive line versus probably a bottom 12 offensive line.
Yeah, I don't think it's hard to see here why the negative is Saquon out for the season, but besides that, their secondary was Swiss cheese in the first half. Absolutely let Mitchell Trubisky light them up.
Just stick them up. Armed robbery.
Mitchell Trubisky has 2 of the best wide receivers in the entire league, in Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson, but come on now. You can't let them – they're not elite route runners. You cannot let them, get that much distance on you.
I saw a interesting fact. In Allen Robinson's career, about 40% of his catches have been deemed catchable.
Only 40%?
Only 40%.
That is impressive, wholeheartedly.
Yep.
I love Allen Robinson. I hate that he plays for the Bears, but –
well, it sounds like he might be going somewhere else somewhere soon. So
I'm hoping he does.
Yeah, so moving on to the Washington football team. They're no longer undefeated. They now have a loss on their record, so shame being brought upon this organization. At the Arizona Cardinals, I just want to say Dan Snyder is doing to the NFL. All these injuries, these are Dan Snyder's fault. I don't know how. It's voodoo magic.
Some witch magic?
Yeah. So with Washington, here's your pro. Your fucking front 7 is amazing. Chase Young is mobbing. He is eating people. Your offense didn't look half bad. It looked stale. That's both the pro and the con. It looked slow. It looked stale. But it had competency in the second half. I'd say that's the same thing with the Eagles game. They were really odd the first half, and then the second half comes around, and they kind of put together a little more. So I'm curious to see with chemistry moving in here more, if they're able to kind of produce a full game. That's my take for Washington. Arizona, holy shit. This offense is taking it off the top. The defense has looked all right. It's looked kind of slow at parts. I think that there's, like I said, the offseason, but this offense has fucking just. Hopkins came in and right away. I think Kyler Murray is my third choice. Not necessarily in order, but he's up there for MVP for me. He has been torching teams. They've looked fucking great. They might win the division as a full team. They might actually win this division. We'll get into Seattle. but they're cooking out in Arizona. They're having a barbecue, and everyone is welcome to come get their ass slapped.
Yeah, so I will start with Washington. My, you know, the my positive would be Terry McLaurin this week.
So
Had a
good.
breakout game this week. 7 receptions, 125 yards, and a touchdown. Really good, especially on this Washington offense that cannot move the ball down the field to save its life, it seems. I would say their pass rush was not effective this week as much as it could have been. They just let Kyler Murray run all over them.
I don't think they let. I mean, it's just what
Well,
he do.
I think this is one of their toughest competitions quarterback wise because they have some stars on the defensive end, but they really need Kerrigan and others to step up, and they didn't in this game. They let Kyler Murray stay in the pocket, even run on them and throw some great on the run passes. But I will move on to Arizona. I will talk about their negative first because it needs to be addressed. Their pass protection is god awful, and that's what's
That
forcing
offensive
Kyler
line is
Murray.
dog shit.
They're forcing Kyler Murray to run almost every play. They really need to get some star power on that offensive line, and that's why I was really surprised that the pass rush didn't tear them apart this week. They should have, absolutely should have. But my absolute positive is Kyler Murray looking hard to stop. So in the first 2 games, I got some stats here for you. In the first 2 games, he's had 516 passing yards, not close to top in the league. I think he's probably around 10th or 11th, but 2 touchdowns passing, 158 yards rushing, and 3 touchdowns running. Those yards are both more than Lamar Jackson. So you can say that Kyler Murray is looking good in this offense just because it's his offense, built from a college team that, or a college coach that really built the offense around him the same way that he played in college. But you could say the same thing about John Harbaugh in Baltimore there, doing the same thing for Lamar. So it is very impressive where Kyler Murray is at this far into the season. I will keep an eye on. I think we should all keep an eye on him and for his progress, moving forward when he plays. I would say good teams. They haven't really played, a really good team yet, and
that's fair.
That's where they need to shine. Is in one of those games, and then I'll give the Cardinals as a whole a lot more credit. But right now, Kyler Murray is the man in town.
Yeah, George Romero's out there trying to cast Terry McLaurin. Scary Terry, my man. That's
a good reference.
This was, I thought, the best game I watched this week by a team. Kansas City at Chargers. I'm going to start with Kansas City. Your pros, you know exactly what your fucking pros are. You have Patrick fucking Mahomes. He kept you in this game. He whirly-dirly this motherfucker. This team looks great. It still looks like a Super Bowl contending team. The rust you'd assume would happen has happened. There's a really interesting interview I heard with him from the Fantasy Footballers podcast. He talked about not having the parades and all that kind of stuff because of COVID. Kind of might have been a pro because they didn't have all those distractions. They want to have it again. So, I mean, this defense is questionable. This offensive line is questionable at times, but Mahomes looks great. Chargers. Tyrod Taylor, we know now, punctured lung.
From his team doctor.
So I don't know how that. I guess it was in the rib area. It was in that area.
He was getting an injection for pain because he got hit in the game last week pretty hard. So he's getting an injection for pain for like a bruise, and he punctured the lung.
See, I hate to see Tyrod Taylor doing, but Herbert was the biggest pro. I have a lot of feelings about Justin Herbert. I call him Herbert and Hyde. He was Herbert today, though. He looked fucking great. This defense held the Chiefs in check for most of this game. I mean, they did phenomenal just covering these receivers. They looked great. This offense looked good. If this is what you have to look forward to, this is a team that can win 10 games.
Yeah.
Because week 1, I was scared. I was shaking my boots. I'm like, I have them going 10-6. Holy shit! If they can barely beat the Bengals, they you know what? If Anthony Lynn hadn't called that punt, go for it. And I saw this team look aggressive. They went for it a couple times on 4th down. This team looked great. I'd be excited to be a Chargers fan. That's my pro initially of this team is Herbert looked great. Your offense looked good.
Yeah, I will say I didn't have as much faith in the Chargers to do well in this game, but let me tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. I will start with the positives for LA because I think that's what really shines in this game. Obviously, the Chiefs won it. They won it in a great fashion. But the big thing in this game was Justin Herbert getting a first start and finding out about an hour before the game time.
Cold start.
So, yeah, he was 22 of 33, 311 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 1 rushing touchdown. So he was on fire this game. And the fact that the league is not talking about it kind of scares me, but also I'm happy about it because then he won't get too big in his head and he'll come back next week and hopefully do the same thing because I think Tyrod's going to be out. I just have a feeling that because of the explosive game that Herbert had, they have to play him. The offense looked way more infused. They were so happy to have him at quarterback, I feel like. So it just looked like a different offense. And then I have a couple positives here. The Eckler and the running back duo of Eckler and Kelly, I think it's Joshua Kelly.
Yeah.
Kept them in this game for the longest time. Eckler had 16 rushes, 93 yards, 4 catches, and 55 yards. Kelly had 23 rushes, 64 yards, and then 3 catches for 49 yards. That's unbelievable numbers between 2 running backs. You combine them, they have 157 yards rushing and 104 yards catching. That's impressive, wholeheartedly, for an offense to do that.
Told everyone Jacob sucked.
Yeah. However, the negatives for this team came on the defensive side of the ball. First time the Chargers had a negative play against the Chiefs was 10 minutes and 13 seconds left in the third quarter. It was the first time they got a negative play against Kansas City, and that was a sack on Patrick Mahomes.
This ain't an easy team to deal with. That's all I'm gonna
No,
say.
it's not. Mahomes. Another negative was Mahomes looked like the defense was only giving him short looks until the second half, but in that second half, he absolutely torched them. Their DBs were exposed.
That fourth quarter was rough.
Especially in the fourth quarter. And,
it felt like the Super Bowl. It felt like the Super Bowl.
And I think that is a negative for both. That'll be my negative for both the Chargers and the Chiefs, was that Mahomes didn't do well until the fourth. And then the fourth, he absolutely went off. However, another negative for the Chargers was they did not get no pressure on him. It seemed like the entire game, and he would just run to evade it the entire game, except for that 1 sack. So they really need to work on that. For such an elite pass rush, they did not look elite at all. And then my big positive for the Kansas City Chiefs was Harrison Butker, the kicker. That end of game sequence was amazing. First, he hits a 53-yarder. Flag for, I believe, false start or holding. Yeah. Or it was a 5-yard penalty back, so a 58-yarder. Then he drills a 58-yarder, but gets iced at the last second by Lynn.
Anthony
Lynn. Then he absolutely drills another 58-yarder to win the game. However, one kick that was not looked at this entire game was his 58-yarder in the third quarter. This man made 3 58-yard field goals on Sunday. That is wholly impressive for a kicker. And if you look at the sequence of the 53-yarder, the 58, and then the other 58, you look at his face after each one, nothing but stone. He is locked in. And with a kicker like that, you cannot go wrong. I think he missed one last week, and then he got a kick, a extra point blocked in the beginning of this game. But he looked determined and absolutely focused. And with a kicker like that, he's going to save him in quite a few games this season. So that's a huge positive for the Chiefs.
Yeah. Move on to Baltimore at Houston to round out the midday games. Baltimore, what can we say? They look good. They look good. They're playing game script. They know what they're doing. Houston. That's honestly my take. I don't really think like the Baltimore Ravens are moving. They're grooving. They're doing well. Lamar had a bit of a kind of rusty start to this game, but I'm not. I don't see an actual con right now with this team. Other than the offense is not as electric as last year, but boo-hoo. The Texans. Your pros, your quarterback. Deshaun Watson out there fucking making plays. Will Fuller's already got a hamstring problem. So, I'm sorry, Houston. Like, this team looks bad.
Yeah,
This is if we were wrong about the Rams, we were dead on right about the fucking Texans.
I would say so as well. We thought that they were going to have an explosive offense and possibly an explosive offense with the new additions and stuff like that, but their defense was going to be
They're really missing a nice
salty.
elite wide receiver.
Yes. I will start out with Baltimore because it's a little bit easier. Their positives for this game for me was J.K. Dobbins looking good, but Ingram still looking great. And them involving the run game more in this game than they did last game obviously made Lamar look not as effective. Lamar did get sacked 4 times for I think it was like 33 yards backwards, but total, I should say. But besides that, that offense was rolling. Okay, they didn't put up as many points as they usually do. You know, that really hurt my fantasy bottom line because I have Lamar and Mark Andrews, but you know, they still won in a very efficient way. A negative for Baltimore was their secondary was absolutely torched by Deshaun Watson. Their secondary is the problem on this defense, if there is one. And I think that good to great teams will expose that. But
We're going to find out Monday.
Houston is a good team, and Deshaun Watson exposed them. 25 for 36, only 9 incompletions, 275 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. It's a good game. It's a good game for any quarterback.
The scoreboard does not indicate.
The scoreboard, however, does not indicate a good game. And I think they only had like 40 yards rushing. Houston did. So
David Johnson was not able to get anything moving.
It was not good at all. I'll move on to Houston. The positive is obviously for me, Deshaun Watson, and then the defense getting 4 sacks on Lamar. I think he's a mobile quarterback and he bounces around the pocket a little too much for my taste, but that's how he's been effective. You know, so
I think that's those youth jitters in these mobile quarterbacks is the want to kind of take off.
It's the want to take off and then immediately run into somebody that got him sacked.
Yeah.
The 4 times. So
I've seen Wilson do it, Cam do it. It seems to be a bad habit early on with these guys.
JJ Watt got to him early and set a precedent for sacks in the game, which was good. The negative for Houston was they couldn't stop the ball at all on all 3 levels of defense. There was 51 yards total rushing for Houston.
That's still bad.
51. Yeah. But all 3 levels of the defense were torched by Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins. The entire game was just bad for Houston on defense. It was sad to watch, and you just kind of hoped that Deshaun may make it a shootout, but didn't happen. And we'll look forward to Baltimore having a lot more success. And
Monday
Houston
night.
Hopefully,
Monday night is my prediction for the AFC Championship game. So
I think it's what everybody's predicting.
Kansas City, Baltimore. There's Steeler fans, I'm sure. They're like, we're going to the Super Bowl. Sunday night, New England at Seattle.
Yes.
What a game. What a game. Russell Wilson has been an MVP. Cam Newton has looked fucking phenomenal. So I'm going to start with New England. What are your pros here? Your offense looks fucking awesome.
Yeah.
This is the
For the first time, a dynamic offense.
It feels good to have been correct about my analysis on Tom Brady with this offense. I will say this. This looks like Tim. I have said it now 2 weeks in a row. This looks like what Josh McDaniels wanted Tim Tebow to be in Denver. This is what this offense reminds me of. A lot. Cam Newton threw for what? Over 400 yards. Like he torched. Just a use your con.
Almost. Yeah.
This offense gets very one-dimensional. I am worried about this offense against a better defense. And flip side, your defense has looked good, but I've also watched without that pass rush, these DBs have been torched. DK Metcalf made Stephon Gilmore look like a bitch.
He made him his bitch.
So it happened, every corner has that day. And move to Seattle. Your offense is cooking. Russ is out there, Gordon Ramsay style, fucking fish filleting defenses. He's looked phenomenal. Like this, the connection is there. This offense, this is what I didn't think to this caliber. This is kind of what I thought would happen. They brought in pretty much the same personnel. Here's the biggest con, though. You have no pass rush.
Big problem.
Week 1, Todd Gurley was annihilating them, and then they put fucking Hill in for some reason, and Hill was getting stopped. That's Atlanta play call. We're not going to talk about Atlanta. Your secondaries looked good. No pass rush. They're having to call blitzes up all the time. You might as well just put fucking Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams on the defensive line and have them rush every other play. I think that Seattle's offense looks great. Like Russell Wilson's MVP candidate.
I will start with the Seattle Seahawks. Russell is obviously the positive in this game. Russell having an MVP type performance in the first 2 games. And I understand that, I hate the MVP talk about my own quarterback, but Russell Wilson
it's going to happen. Week 1, week 2, we're going to start looking at who we think is MVP.
Well, Russell Wilson over the first 2 weeks is, I believe, 5th in passing yards, 5th in passing yards with 610 total, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, and then my favorite stat of his is he's almost thrown as many touchdowns as he has incompletions.
Yeah, 2 less touchdowns than incompletions.
He has 11 incompletions on the season. That one also says that his wide receivers are doing amazing. However, one of those incompletions was the interception to Greg Olsen.
Another was DK in week 1.
What the heck, man? It's obvious that this guy is probably the best in the league at this point. It's only week 2. I'll mark that down. Could change next week.
He's top 2 quarterbacks. I will
top 2 quarterbacks right now. Absolutely.
He is moved to 2. I thought he was 3. He moved to 2. I will not put him at 1, but I've had this. We live in Seattle, so a lot of Seahawks fans have already gotten into this argument so many times already. But he has looked, Jesus Christ, he has looked like a monster.
Yeah, and then getting to the negative, I think, in this game, it's the exact same thing that you said. It's the pass rush. Didn't even pressure Cam at all, it seemed. 0 sacks. It's absolutely ridiculous performance by this defensive line, and they need. If they get 1 pass rusher on this defense, the team immediately jumps up a step.
So they've been rumored to be
the NFC champion.
I'll say they've been rumored to be in conversations with Washington about trying to get Kerrigan.
Amazing. That would be amazing.
So I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's been a rumor around the windmill.
Yeah. Moving on to New England, my positive for this game was obviously Cam Newton. He showed us that he can still ball out against good teams.
If he'd gone to the outside, they would have won that game.
Yeah, absolutely, they would have. I totally agree.
Don't even be mad though at that loss. You guys played. Oh my God, but
Julian Edelman, big shout out to him as well. I started him this week in fantasy. He got almost 30 points. If he would have gotten the touchdown, maybe I would have won this.
I never stopped believing.
Cam Newton this week had passed 30 for 44 with 397 yards passing, almost 400. He had 11 rushes for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns. He could have had 3 rushing touchdowns, and they would have
gone out.
It's just an amazing performance by a person that we have had doubts about for the last 3 years. But I really enjoy seeing Cam do well, because when Cam does well, I would much rather see a happy Cam than a sad Cam. And he was having so much fun against the Seahawks. And you could see
it's not Vontaze Burfict. We all want them to do well.
So it was really nice seeing Cam do well. And then the negative for this was that these DBs that are supposed to be elite got absolutely torched.
There's just no pass rush. New England has no pass rush as well. It's just like Seattle.
Well. So you're relying heavily on these DBs, and then Stephon Gilmore gets socked in the mouth by DK Metcalf over and over and
They
over.
needed to move him
again.
off. I don't know why they kept him on there. They needed to move him off.
Supposed to be the best DB in the league, and DK is their deep threat, and that's what Gilmore does best, defending against. And they got into a physical altercation, I think twice during the game, because DK was punching the shit out of Stephon Gilmore. And yeah. I love seeing that tenacity in a second-year player, especially DK Metcalf, who I have a huge fantasy crush on. If you have DK Metcalf, you better be starting DK Metcalf. That's all I'm saying. He's becoming Russell Wilson's favorite deep target, more than Tyler Lockett, and it will only continue.
Yeah. All right.
And then moving on to the final game.
Monday Night Football opened up the Death Star, as they call it. That stadium looked fucking sick as shit.
It did. Also, SoFi did as well. Just shout out to SoFi.
Nah, fuck SoFi. Allegiance, where it's at, baby.
Hey, just because you got beat week 1 there.
No, SoFi looks really
doesn't mean it's a bad season, okay?
SoFi looks cool, but SoFi just looks like LA. Allegiant looks like fucking Raider football, baby. It's in there. It's dark. It's black. It's fucking Raider country. I love it, dude. I'm not a Raiders fan, but I definitely have loved Derek Carr. So, but we'll start with the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees looks old. His arm is not what it once was. They talked about week 1. They weren't happy with their offense. Week 2, they're certainly not. They looked a little rusty at best. Kamara looked fucking amazing. Kamara and Latavius Murray too were both torching this Raiders defense. So that is a pro. Michael Thomas, when he returns, this offense will probably get kicking more. The defense looked good at parts. It looked bad at parts. They were the only person that could stop Waller was Williams. You know, Josh Jacobs torched this defense. So the penalties were killer. I thought that definitely the Saints were getting way too many penalties. I didn't think half of them needed to be called, if we're being honest. That was just my take on the officiating this game. That helped, I think, killed the Saints' momentum at times. But the Saints looked like a team that needs a minute to get going. I still think that they're a really good team. I don't sell them out. But
even with Michael Thomas, they looked like that.
Yeah,
even with their star wide receiver.
In particular, it was
they were struggling.
It was Drew and the pass. It was Drew Brees and the pass catchers looked like they needed a minute. The running backs were fucking torching even against Tampa. The running backs
didn't need a minute.
You are correct. Traquan did not. But the Raiders, baby, after just an atrocious start. At that first quarter, I was like, holy shit, this is gonna be a bad game to watch.
It's gonna be the Raiders of old, and then
was wrong. First quarter was Oakland. The rest of the game was Vegas. Josh,
yeah.
Here's your pro. Josh fucking Jacobs is here to play. He looked like a top 5 running back. He was making the Saints look silly. We're going to get into your cons now. Your defense looks like shit. It's Carolina, but in black. That's how I feel about this team. Your offense looks good. Derek Carr looked great towards the end of the game with Darren Waller, just hitting them, started hitting receivers. Just look at your defense looked like shit.
Yeah,
Abrams almost died. I thought Abrams had actually died for a second when he hit that part.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second because he is motionless on the sideline, halfway underneath the scissor lift for the television camera. He's underneath it, halfway facing it, motionless, not moving at all. Everybody thinks he's out, and then all of a sudden, a trainer comes up to him and he pops up and runs. Not a jog.
They injected him with some
runs.
fucking like opioid, like heroin straight
up. Did they hit him with the Aaron Rodgers? Whatever he gave, they got Aaron Rodgers
the Romo. When Romo broke his ribs against the Niners, and they talked about, he's like, yeah, they hit me with an EpiPen of basically morphine, and then halfway through the second quarter, they hit me with another one, and I'm just like, that's all I could think of. They're just hitting Abram with the fucking morphine pens.
I don't know what happened, but he woke up and
they dropped a couple fucking oxy into his water cup.
But it's like 15 seconds. Everybody's like, uh-oh. And then we cut to commercial, and we come back, and we see the highlight of Abrams. Immediately after we cut to commercial, Abrams gets up and sprints to his sideline. So I don't know what the hell that was, but that was a very funny moment of the game.
Yeah.
Me moving, I'm going to start with New Orleans. The only plus I saw was Alvin Kamara looking like he'll have to carry them for these next couple of games. He was the only effective piece on offense. Consistently, I think Tre'Quan Smith is an effective piece, but he's not going to be a consistent, wide receiver one for sure. And negatives were all Drew Brees. Their defense gave up in the second half, I would say, so that's also a negative.
This Saints team felt like it lost a lot of momentum in that third quarter, and then that last drive was pathetic.
There was no
hurry. There was nothing. Yeah, it was pathetic.
So the inaccuracy from Brees' game and the interception, that's not what Brees does, and that's why they lost. If they had Jared Cook, I remember, open on the left side of the field, and he overthrew him.
Are you talking about the push-off play, though?
No, I'm talking about the tallest man on the field, Jared Cook, being overthrown by 3 feet by Drew Brees.
I know which one you're talking about, yeah.
And Jared Cook stretched to grab it, and he still couldn't get it. So it's a problem. He looked rusty against Tampa Bay, and everybody thought, it's just the beginning of the season rust. So we'll hope that that's the case for Drew Brees in what we all think is his final year. But I don't know.
This has kind of been the MO, it feels like, though, for the past couple of years, is Drew Brees kind of gets off to these wacky starts and then picks up middle of the season heavy. This is definitely his last season, though. I'm calling it now.
They also had an easier division these last couple of years. So
it's not that much harder.
But I would say it's harder.
This is the easiest I think it's ever been.
Carolina has a much better team. Tampa Bay has a much better team. So I disagree with that. Moving on to Las Vegas, however, the big positive was Derek Carr to Darren Waller. If I didn't have in fantasy a little backstory here. Darren Waller was the one player that I was playing against at the end of the week, and I was up 16 points. And Darren Waller single-handedly beat me this last week. However, I couldn't give a shit because I've been watching Darren Waller since the Hard Knocks season 2 years ago. Not this season, but the last season. And Darren Waller was the story that you wanted to follow going into last year. And what did he do? Absolutely balled out, made himself the number one target for Derek Carr. And that is still happening. Damn it. Darren Waller will be one of the top tight ends in this league this year. It's not a bold prediction. I think it's going to come true. He gets the most targets out of that entire offense. He had 12 targets this week for 103 yards and a touchdown. And that touchdown was a very impressive one, by the way. So that is something I really look forward to on this Raiders offense. However, it does seem like that's the only big pass catcher. Obviously, you have Josh Jacobs putting in work, but they really need to focus on spreading the ball out to Ruggs and who's the guy from Clemson?
Brian Edwards. You talking about?
No, the guy from Clemson, the white guy.
Oh, Hunter Renfrow.
Hunter Renfrow should be a part of this offense. He is easily like the best route runner on the team and has the best hands. So he needs to be more involved, and they need to start doing that. The negative for the Las Vegas Raiders was their defensive front could not get any pressure on Breeze. I think it's really easy to see that Saints offensive line had an easier game on Monday, and if they can improve on that, even get a couple sacks a game, this team is going to be a lot different, and people are going to view them a lot differently. They beat a good team this week, and that is very impressive for the Raiders. However, they do have a history of that, where they'll beat a good team and then go lose to a Miami or someone like that. So we'll see how their team goes and how good Derek Carr can continue to be. But I don't have faith in Derek Carr. Ever since he got that leg injury a couple of years back, he's just never been the same. So I will hope that the Raiders do well, but I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Raiders. 2-0, baby, Super Bowl.
And that concludes it for this week for games. I think there's a lot to look forward to this coming week. I know there is for the Packers. For me, I really look forward to seeing how they play against a good defense like New Orleans, somebody who has DBs that are not rookies or absolute jokes. So we'll see how the Packers do against them. I'm excited for that, but I'm really excited to see how the Chargers do this week.
Yeah. No, so that's week 2 recap. We hope y'all enjoyed it. This is new for us, so we're gonna keep trying to tinker with it and get it bigger and better. So we hope you tune in for week 3.
Yeah, come back next week for the week 3 pros and cons. All right. Well, we'll see you next week. Have a good one, guys, and make sure to keep kicking them pooches.
Kick it.